So anyway, let's jump right in, because actually MMB, surprising as it might seem, has found itself in the middle of a legislative, I don't think it rises to the level of controversy, but a legislative discussion, and that is the issue of whether or not the legislature should have its own budgeting service, its own legislative budget office, so to speak. So maybe we can start, Mr. Franz, by having you tell us what it is that MMB does and how this proposal comes up and what your view is on it.
So MMB prepares what we call fiscal notes. So when the legislature is considering legislation, they want to do an analysis of what will that cost. So, for example, if they want to add a law that requires the Department of Transportation to do something new or add to what they're already doing, they want to understand how much is that really going to cost. What is the overall cost of that program going to be? So when the legislature puts together a bill and introduces that bill, or even before, they can ask for a fiscal note. Now, those fiscal notes come to MMB, and then MMB figures out, well, which agencies can answer the factual question. So in the example I just described, they would ship that fiscal note request over to the Department of Transportation. They would do all the factual background to understand what does this new program involve, how much would it cost, and then it comes back to MMB, who reviews that fiscal note and then sends it over to the legislature for them to analyze. And there's a lot of discussion. I mean, people sometimes forget that it's not a set process. So because sometimes people write legislation and we come back with an answer that maybe it costs $250,000. They say, well, we didn't think it would cost that much. And we talk to them and we find out, well, actually, they didn't really intend the legislation to do what we think it does. And so we change, the legislation is changed, or we revise our assumptions. So it's all a matter of digging up the facts in the agency, reviewing that at MMB, and then providing that clarifying understanding of the fiscal note to the legislature. So that process goes on hundreds and hundreds of times throughout the legislature, as you can imagine. Now, there's no requirement that a bill have a fiscal note. And actually, we think in many cases that was one thing that the Office of Legislative Auditor suggested that we should do to improve the system going forward. But right now, there is no requirement. Now, on the other hand, there is a requirement that there be a revenue estimate for tax bills that are introduced. So the Revenue Department does those separately from fiscal notes. So this process goes on. It's been going on. Minnesota's been doing it this way for over about 41 years. And there's always a fiscal note or two every session, it seems, that gets people a little concerned because either the fiscal note cost much more than the author of the bill and thought that it would, or that there was some description of the law that wasn't quite accurate. So these things get negotiated and get reviewed and discussed. But this year there is a proposal that instead of having MMB do the review and submitting the fiscal note, that there would be a new office created in the legislature, and the legislature would have its own office to prepare its fiscal notes for the proposed legislation. And that's kind of the debate right now, is where should that office be? Our position has been that we don't think the system is broken. We think it's working just fine. A lot of people talk about the fact that over 30 states have a situation where the budget office is in the legislature. And they say, well, we're kind of an outlier. I say, well, we're actually a leader. What happens is you need the rating agencies that look at Minnesota in terms of whether they should be rated AAA or AA. They look at how well does our government function. And they look at things like nonpartisan fiscal notes or nonpartisan forecast, budget forecast. There are some states that have dueling forecasts, for example, that the legislature may put out a forecast and the government may put out, the executive may put out a forecast, but we have a nonpartisan forecast that everybody relies on. It's twice a year. And the budget office, we think, operates much the same way. There are ways we could improve it, but our position is it's working well. We have dedicated non-professionals. I never see a fiscal note until it's sent over to the legislature. I have no involvement in it. No one tells me that it's even going on. It's all done at the level of professional, nonpartisan staff who do a great job of getting these facts.
So I suppose we should at least put out on the table the fact that you are a partisan appointee by the governor, as was true in the Pawlenty administration and will be true to the successor of Governor Dayton. And does that in any way affect the budgeting, the fiscal note process?
It does not. And the Office of Legislative Auditor did a report in 2012 and he looked at this process, and he studied it, and he found there were, in the time period that he looked, both in the beginning of the Dayton administration and the prior administration, he found no instances where the political appointee in charge of that agency had any influence or slowed down or sped up or changed the cost estimate on these fiscal notes. So I think it's fairly well established that the nonpartisan staff, the professional staff, they do their job, they put it together the best that they can, and without any regard to political appointees. So we think it works well in that regard.